Hi, this is James Garber of Total Library here for a book review. Today's book I'll be discussing about today, Live Girls by Ray Garton. This was first published by Pocket Books in 1987. This is my second vampire book I read on the channel. First one being The Stake, which was not a good book at all. This was definitely a lot better than that book. I first discovered this book from my friend Leon from the YouTube channel Paperback Maniac. He did a review of this book, and it really piqued my interest as I love the 80s, and I love seeing like New York City during the 80s when it was, a grimy, filthy, dirty place before it lost that its charm, its character. Essentially, it lost it. Now it's just this like fancy, clean city. It just, yeah, I prefer the good old grimy New York City. I know, I love. But anyway, this was a very interesting vampire book and a different take on it as well. There's definitely Ray Garton puts a spin on the whole vampire lore, and it was a good book. I definitely enjoyed this book. It was a decent read. I'll explain later in my review. I'll explain later on my review what I liked with this book, what I didn't like with it, and some other things as well. All right, on to the review. Plot: Davey Owen, a editor for Penn Publishing, a magazine company in New York City. Life hasn't been going well for Davey. His wife, Beth, has left him after being frustrated by his lack of motivation to get further in his job as he's low on rent pay for their apartment. Not getting more money, not getting sex from him, and because of his calm attitude towards things. Beth feels Davey is a pushover, letting everyone take advantage over him and never stands up for himself. Feeling tired and frustrated by both his wife and the content the publisher wants him to work on, Davey steps out for an early lunch break while traveling through Times Square, passing by a bunch of live sex shows, adult bookstores, clubs, and peep shows while seeing the filth around him and dead animals, trash, and homeless people. One place catches his attention, a place called Live Girls, a peep show with only one neon sign and very dark looking. He enters and pays for tokens for a booth. Inside this dark booth with only a red ceiling light above him. After placing the tokens into the slot, a panel opens up showing a young, beautiful woman with pale white skin and long hair. She touches Davey's arms, then his chest, and allows him to touch and squeeze her breasts. She then finishes her show by giving him a blowjob. Despite having a good time, however, Davey feels worse than before and returns to Penn Publishing. One of Davey's co-workers, Casey Thorne, is being harassed by Chad Wilkins, a very tall, handsome, yet total creep. When Casey sees Davey, she is shocked to see him looking pale, getting him some coffee while talking to him, as Davey explains the problems he's been going through and Beth has left him for good after getting into a fight. Casey states Davey isn't a bad person, along with saying he'll find himself the right woman. Davey is then called to a meeting with his boss, Miss Schumann, who isn't pleased with Davey's lack of work, along with wasting time with stories that go against the company and what their readers want, and doesn't approve of his anti-gun views, as Schumann tells him their customers pay for violence, sex, and mayhem, and if they don't publish what their customers want, they would be out of business. And she adds Chad got the promotion that Davey wanted. Davey quits his job while Casey was being harassed by Chad. She tells him she already has a date with Davey, which he agrees to after telling Casey he quit his job. After leaving Penn Publishing, Davey is about to get on a bus but has no money, only one token left. Davey returns to Live Girls to see the same woman he saw. However, after leaving, he notices that around his crotch is bleeding. Earlier that day, Walter steps off the subway and makes his way towards his sister's apartment as she asks him to follow her husband, Vermin Macy, who's been acting strange lately. However, when Walter enters, he finds his sister lying on the living room floor with her housecoat torn open and bite marks on her neck. He searches for his sister's daughter and finds her lying in the bathtub and has been mutilated with her clothes torn to shreds. He then finds Vermin's clothes on the bed covered in blood. Walter vomits at the sight of all the blood around him. When the police show up at the crime scene, he explains what Vermin has been doing lately, along with his sudden change in character after he visited the peep show Live Girls. He tries convincing the officer to go to this Live Girls place, but never does. Unable to wait for answers from the police, Walter continues his investigation, hoping to catch Vermin in the act, but he refuses to enter Live Girls himself. Over the next few days, he notices a younger man who keeps on visiting Live Girls, and each time he comes out, he's always looking pale. He follows this man. Davey keeps visiting Live Girls and seeing the same mysterious woman while Casey is trying to get a relationship going with him. On a rare midnight, he goes to the peep show and sees the woman about to get into a taxi. He rushes over to speak with her. The woman recognizes him as Davey states how many times he's come to her. Davey asks where she is going and tells him she's going to her other job at the Midnight Club to dance. Davey asks if he can come along, which she agrees and tells her name is Annie. They reach this gothic-like club that's blasting loud music. Inside is very dark with red and white lights and purple rugs. Both the club members and employees are very tall, handsome, and pretty, yet have pale white skin. Davey sits at a table in front of a platform and orders himself a drink. Then Annie and a male dancer appear out of the darkness while dancing around a cross with flashing red and white lights while playing loud music as the cross bursts into flames. Davey is amazed by the wild dance along with getting more turned on by Anna. When she returns, the two chat for a bit as Davey, feeling more confident about himself, asks Anna they go somewhere private to get it on. Anna agrees to take him to her apartment but leaves her house special drink, a reddish drink that's only for the employees. Davey asks if she's going to finish it but replies she won't be needing it. When they get to Anna's apartment, the two engage in wild sex before Anna bites and sucks blood around his groin. Then Anna has Davey bite her on the neck, sucking blood out of her. He passes out and awakens a few hours later as Anna has Davey washed up before leaving as she's looking forward to seeing him again. Unable to find where Vermin is, Walter approaches Davey after leaving Live Girls. He poses as a reporter wanting to do the story on the sex industry. Davey agrees as the two go to a bar as Walter keeps buying him drinks till he confesses what he's been doing at Live Girls and this woman he's been with. Walter explains what he's really doing and that he's been watching him enter this peep show many times, stating he believes there's something sinister going on with Live Girls and the people who run it. Walter is also worried about Davey as he looks terrible and tries to get him to see his wife Jackie, a doctor. Davey refuses but agrees a cab ride home as Walter gives him a card to contact him. Walter plans to break into Midnight Club. When he drops Davey off, Casey takes him into the apartment as she's been trying to get a hold of him all morning. Walter tells Casey what happened to her friend and he fears something bad will happen to Davey, just like his brother-in-law. When Casey returns to check on Davey later after feeling better, he tries to get it on with Casey, who's shocked by this sudden change. While she enjoys it at first but stops Davey when he tries to bite her neck. Upset what he did, he swears to call Walter's wife for help, knowing something's wrong with him. Casey goes to Live Girls and speaks with the person behind the booth, demanding to know what happened to her friend. When she refuses to leave, the woman behind the booth tries pulling Casey towards her. She manages to break free but is chased by a large snake-like creature that pulls her away from the entrance. Then hears a voice say, "It's too late now." Later on, Casey is seduced by Shida, owner of Live Girls and Midnight Club. When Walter investigates Midnight Club, he discovers Vermin is in the back, placing 2 samples of blood as payment in the fridge. Walter confronts Vermin and is shocked to see how strong he is all of a sudden, along with fangs in his mouth, realizing he and the club members are vampires. Vermin also reveals why the police haven't done nothing about his murdered sister and niece, as high-ranking members of New York social elite are also vampires, as they'll cover up any murder that's linked to them. He also tells Walter that the club owners know about Walter snooping around and will be ready to deal with him later. During the struggle against Vermin, as Walter is being strangled, he opens the fridge and smashes a bottle of infected blood on Vermin, which causes his skin to burn. Walter then grabs another bottle and forces the bad blood down Vermin's throat, causing him to choke on it and die. Walter escapes the club by smashing out a window. Knowing if he returns back home, he might endanger Jackie, he flags down a cab and tells the driver to take him to New York Times. Once he enters his office, Walter looks up a murder on a pimp, Cedric Flostio's, that he saw working at Midnight Club and discovers the man died the same way his sister was murdered. They both bled to death and yet came back as vampires. When he goes to check on Davey, he finds him lying on the floor naked with no pulse. When Davey awakens, Walter tells him what happened at Midnight Club and has Davey tied up to his bed, knowing he too is now a vampire. Unable to control his hunger, Davey orders Walter to leave for the sake of his own safety. After breaking free, Davey turns into a bat and finds Chad in a bar. Chad enters the men's room, and before he can unzip his fly, he hears something enter. When he turns around, Chad is horrified to see Davey staring at him with red glowing eyes, wings out of his back, and fangs. Chad tries pleading with him, but Davey rams him against the wall and sucks him dry. Later on that night, Jackie is kidnapped by Cedric, but is unable to reach Walter as he placed guard around his windows. Walter calls his friend Detective Riley for help, but is told that Riley, along with his whole family, were found murdered in his home. When Davey goes looking for Shadid, he is shocked to find Casey at Live Girls, and she too is becoming a vampire. Davey and Walter come up with a plan to save both women, along with stopping Shadid and her army of vampires waiting to feast upon anyone they hunger for. Live Girls is a dark, gritty, sexy, yet creepy novel of vampires secretly living within the big city of New York. Highly detailed on the filthy streets of Times Square along with other places, characters were well written and crafted throughout the novel. Davey, a pushover who couldn't defend or stand up for himself, later turns into a vampire. Not only does he feel better than before, able to act his sexual fantasies along with killing people he doesn't like, but is torn from this new form as it's hard to control his lust for blood. And when we do see the vampires, they are a sight to behold, both beautiful yet frightening. And the feral vampires, which are large, hideous bats that hunger for blood, are kept locked up as they'll go after anyone they can sink their fangs into. What I also like was how Ray changes up the vampire lore around with Live Girls. Characters do not use crosses or holy water, which has been copy and pasted too many times. Instead, he uses infected blood, which can harm and even kill vampires, including fire. However, while the start of Live Girls is good, but towards the end it begins to feel rushed as Ray is trying to wrap everything up quickly, which the ending got a bit confusing at times of what was going on. The ending, which I didn't mind, but felt it could have been darker to see both Davey and Casey embrace their new lives as vampires, and when we do get to see the vampires in action sucking people bone dry along with other events of violence does happen, is worth the wait. Overall, Live Girls is a fun yet decent erotic horror novel. However, if you're looking for more carnage with vampires and their victims, then Live Girls isn't the vampire novel you're looking for. But if you want a trip back to mid-80s of NYC to see its filthy streets and run-down places in all its glory and some vampires in the mix, then you might enjoy Live Girls. And that's it for the review today. Hope you enjoyed it. And I did enjoy Live Girls. It was like, a decent read. It was fun. I felt it could have, it could have been a little better, but it was still a fun book to read. It had its good moments, and I really do like the characters in it, so I definitely will be hanging on to this book. And I liked how Ray kind of changed up the lore of vampires instead of using the traditional things like most people do, like, crosses and holy water. That gets used like to death like way too many times, and garlic was well, it mentions that garlic does kind of like, it does keep them away, but it doesn't state, it doesn't really like, hurt them. They just can't stand the smell of it, so it doesn't like, it's not like an effective way to kill them. But I do like how in the story he uses like infected blood that can harm them, which was really interesting. And you got these like large feral bats that they've been sucking like every type of blood type that there is, and it basically turned them into what they are. So that was interesting. And there's also a funny part which I really liked when Walter discovers that Davey is a vampire. He comes over to his apartment to do a test to see if the traditional methods can harm vampires. So he pulls out a cross, which doesn't bother Davey at all. Then he holds up a Bible. That doesn't do anything as well. Or no, wait. No, he doesn't hold up a Bible. No. Sorry. He holds up a cross. That doesn't do anything. Then he says, "Have you seen yourself in the mirror?" He's like, "Yes, I have." And then, oh, that's right. Then Walter tries a necklace with like a golden necklace with a cross on it, which does nothing as well. And in Walter's frustration, he goes, "Fuck you, Brian Stroker." That part made me laugh. It was so funny. I still enjoyed it. And there's a sequel to this book called Nightlife. That's right, Nightlife. I've heard mixed things about it. It continues after the events of this book with Davey and Casey, so I'll check that book out, see if it's good, and some other books by Ray Garton as well. Alright, that's it for the review today. Hope you enjoyed it. And for my next book, I will begin reading Dream Park by Larry Niven and Steve Barnes. I'm looking forward to reading this. And after that, I will be reading Retribution by Mark Grant, I believe the author's name is. Yeah, that'll be my next book. And then after that, I will go to my next series of books I have planned out as well. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to October Library, the YouTube channel, and the Facebook group the same name. I place and post and review fiction. Until then, I'll catch you later.